Good afternoon. My name is Buddhi, Paranamana. As the name states, I'd like to kind of dive into why I selected this particular topic, first of all, and why I want to call it a blueprint for a sustainable, circular and sustainable future, right? So, want to kind of dive a little bit into what I mean by a blueprint. So the reason I chose the word blueprint is because it is something that you can build on and you can also replicate. So if you have a steady blueprint, you can build a structure on top of it. You can build something beyond it, right? So there's a lot of conversation today throughout the morning session about action, right? There's a lot of conversation about what is the action that we are taking today to create circularity, to improve sustainability. And this is kind of what I want to drive into because I represent a company that is part of the challenge. We are a sourcing and manufacturing company. So how do we take this challenge and create opportunity from it? So this is what I want to touch on. So I want to focus on three key facets. One is circular economy and what it means to us as a design, sourcing and manufacturing company. And then I need to touch on a little bit of context about the company that I represent, which is PDS Limited. And then finally, how does this become the entire sustainable ecosystem by using what we have created as what I would like to refer to as the blueprint, right? So let's dive into it. In terms of circular economy for us, as I mentioned, we are a design, sourcing and manufacturing company. So I kind of wanted to visually depict what circularity means to a company as ourselves, as well as a lot of representatives here who are from the apparel manufacturing and design and sourcing industry. So this is what I believe we can visually represent in this whole circularity of a product. So starting from your raw materials to your design, to obviously your production and manufacturing, distribution, consumption, and finally the 3 R's that was mentioning a lot, but a little variation of that, repair, reuse, and resell, then reducing waste, of course, and recycling. And the cycle continues, right? So this is the entire form of circularity, as I said, how we believe it can be represented within our industry. Now, the reason this, we'll come back to this at the end of the session, so I will kind of show why I'm talking about this at the beginning and how this will kind of represent towards the end and how we have mapped according to this circular function of apparel manufacturing. A little context about the company before I go into the how is required because to put it into context of who we are. So all these companies are within the ecosystem of PDS Limited. The reason I show this is not to really focus on each individual company, but to show that we are a large organization, which means the larger the organization, the larger the challenge that we create, right? So that is the context I want to provide. So we are at the moment producing over 1 million garments, and overall we have about a $2 billion top line. Again, why am I talking about this? Is to provide context. So what are we doing with this revenue and what are we doing with this challenge and how are we creating an opportunity out of it? What we've identified is that while we are a large entity and we have a large footprint in the industry, we also need to start looking at how we turn that around and bring it back into the circular economy as well as provide solutions in the circularity space. So what we've created is a ventures company that has a $50 million fund, and we are focused on investing in sustainable supply chain startups and companies who provide various solutions in sustainability, recycling, repurposing, material innovation, and things of that nature. So out of this $50 million fund, we've at the moment invested over 19.8 million in 63 startups in various spaces, in fashion tech, retail tech, consumer tech, sustainability, and digital-first consumer tech. Again, like I said, providing the context. So we identify that there is something that we need to address and solve here. And what we are creating here in terms of the blueprint that I mentioned is how do we go towards doing that? And the how is looking at investing back into solutions that we can provide into that space. So some of these companies you might have heard of, some of them might be new words for you guys, but The idea is really to kind of map out how we provide that solution in the circularity space. The entire idea is the business case. Again, in the morning session, many times it was mentioned. How do you create a business case out of circularity? How do you scale it? How do you create the need so that it is not just nice to have or not just something that is being done for the requirement of it being done? So this is that business case that we built. We believe that investment into this space is something that will give us a return from a business perspective while successfully achieving our sustainability and circularity objectives. So as I mentioned, the three areas, right? The main three areas that we discussed on. What do we see as circular economy in the apparel, sourcing, design, and manufacturing space? What is the investment or what is the action that we have taken today and we provide that solution? How do we provide that solution? And finally, coming on to the sustainable ecosystem. The key that I want to kind of focus on in the blueprint that I mentioned is the word that has been mentioned right throughout the sessions in the morning, collaboration, right? There are various methods of collaboration, of course, collaboration, but how do you identify the right areas to collaborate in? Regardless of what those specific areas and the how, we have found a way to collaborate by way of investment. Your way of collaborating might be different. However, the key is collaboration. This is genuinely by the baseline blueprint that we are referring to. So by way of collaboration, coming back to the slide that I showed earlier, how do we now take these investments, these collaborations, and plug it into this entire ecosystem? This is that sustainable solution or sustainable ecosystem that I referred to earlier. So we have created or we have identified opportunity and solutions that goes in areas of the entire supply chain of digital wardrobes. In production, this is a common to bodies that provide you details such as HIG and LEED. LEED was mentioned in one of the presentations earlier. An interesting fact that I came across while looking into the LEED certified buildings, Bangladesh has one of the highest LEED certified factories, number of factories in the world. 187 to be exact, and 183 of that are apparel. How do we create a business case out of that? This is what we want to try to identify, and this is what we want to try to create, right? I think everyone should be discussing that collaboratively on if Bangladesh has that offer far against everyone else. Right? In comparison, I believe the other countries are at like double-digit numbers. So how do you create that business opportunity? By putting it into this entire supply chain of circular supply chain. Additionally, from production, then we move into consumption and conscious buying. So we have companies such as Good For You, Compare Ethics, and Common Objectives. These are platforms that provide data on your supply chain, your manufacturers, that you can go and evaluate them before making decisions on purchasing or supply chain. We also have in repair, reuse, and resell, companies such as Yellow Octopus, Reflaunt, By Rotation, and Style Theory. These are all, again, interesting companies that are doing either repurposing, repurchasing, or reselling of products. This was also mentioned in one of the presentations earlier about setting up fashion retail reselling points. You see this happening in the UK supply chain, UK retail market, as well as US retail markets as well. So again, providing that input for it. And in terms of recycling, we also focus on upcycling. So Upcycle Labs is an interesting case study that I'll touch upon in the next slide. And then finally, feeding it back into the loop of raw materials by way of material innovations. So this is how we want to see the entire circularity loop being closed. I mentioned quite a lot of companies, I realize, but I want to take you through maybe 2 or 3 case studies in terms of how we are seeing this solution being applied today. Because the entire objective of what we are trying to achieve is how do we solve the problem at hand today. And some examples of that is what I would like to share. So the company I mentioned as Positive Materials in collaboration with a second company that we have as Matera. is focused on regenerative cotton, but now we have, as you know, regenerative cotton is what is being discussed at the moment in terms of being environmentally friendly and the next stage of the evolution of cotton. But we are looking at regenerative cotton recycling because this will be the next problem to solve. And this has been, the concept has been proven, and we have done extensive work on this, and we'd like to see this scale up. Avenue is another instance of using recycled cotton instead of your standard virgin cellulose or plastic-based materials. So again, instead of tapping into tree bark that gives you virgin cellulose, we are looking at how can we use waste in recycled cotton base and repurposing that into lysol fabric. Finally, on upcycling, as I mentioned, a very interesting project that we have is on Upcycle Labs. This is currently located in Nottingham, UK. And what this does is this has a very interesting USP of recycling any type of apparel waste as well as additional other waste such as glass, such as leather, and pretty much a lot of materials get covered under this, and we are looking at a zero waste technology in sense we can repurpose all of that into different type of materials that can be molded. So if there's some opportunity for molded type product, we can repurpose all of those type of materials that I mentioned here into things like bricks, fittings, furniture parts, and home accessories. So these are some examples I just picked out that are happening most recently out of the entire portfolio of investments that we've done into. Why is this important? Because I want to show that there are solutions that are available today, right? We are talking about what can we do, what can be done. We would like to emphasize on there are things happening today and how do we become part of this and how do we then collaborate, right? That was the last thought I want to leave with you. Collaboration is the blueprint, in my opinion, that we want to focus on when it comes to circularity. And as a contributor towards the apparel industry, as a manufacturer, as a design and sourcing company, we have taken a step, we have created that blueprint, and I invite everyone to join us in that blueprint, as well as take that blueprint to your organizations and then the entire supply chain as a whole, and replicate it, and hopefully we can work together towards creating an overall circular economy. Thank you very much.